Midnight, 23rd June, 1812. The moon rides high over the River Niemen, silvering a forest of French bayonets. 3 frail pontoon bridges tremble under the weight of Europe's mightiest war machine. First come the scouts, splashing ashore as owls screech from the pines. Then, in an endless thunder of boots, roll 450,000 soldiers, Poles in square-topped shakos, Italians humming camp songs, Germans muttering prayers, and the Imperial Guard in gleaming brass. They carry muskets, eagles, and only 3 weeks of bread, because Napoleon Bonaparte swears Russia will kneel before the dough turns moldy. Far ahead, unseen in the dark, Russian peasants torch their own barns, foul their wells, and vanish into the black soil. In that moment, the Grande Armée crosses not just a river, but a threshold between stunning triumphs of the past and the calamitous legend that will define its future. Dawn paints the eastern sky pink, and the greatest forced march in history begins. Napoleon rides a white charger, cloak whipping in the dust, shouting promises of a lightning war. He points toward Vilna, toward Smolensk, toward the golden domes of Moscow, as if distance itself were a mere formality. Yet the land has other plans. Each day, the columns push deeper, and each night, the sun-warmed earth turns their boots into lead. The July heat rises in shimmering curtains from endless rye fields. Men suck pebbles to trick their throats into producing saliva. Horses collapse, ribs showing through sweaty hides. Teamsters carve straps from the dead animals and drag wagons themselves. Russia's twin field armies retreat in opposite arcs, refusing battle. In the north, the cautious Scots-born Michael Barclay de Tolly backs away, burning grain, smashing mills, leaving nothing but ash. In the south, fiery Prince Pyotr Bagration mirrors the dance. Between them ride Cossacks, lean men on small, tireless horses who slash stragglers, loot medical wagons, and vanish like ghosts. Reports flow into Napoleon's tent: dysentery in the ranks, typhus in the hospitals, 30,000 men already lost to heat and hunger. The emperor studies the maps, taps Moscow with a gauntleted finger, and mutters, "The heart must be pierced. One blow. One." In mid-August, the granite towers of Smolensk rise from the haze. Napoleon sees at last the chance to pin the Russians against stone walls. Cannon roar for 2 days, streets vanish under smoke, timber houses erupt in fireballs. But when French grenadiers storm the ruins, they find empty bastions. Barclay and Bagration have slipped away again, leaving only charred icons, shattered bells, and 3,000 of their own dead to slow the chase. Napoleon's Marshal Louis Davout warns, if they keep falling back, winter will be here before peace. Napoleon snarls, "Then we will winter in the Kremlin." Behind him, quartermasters already ration black bread to half portions. While Versailles whispers of swift victory, the Russian court boils with rage at endless retreat. Tsar Alexander I dismisses Barclay, fearing his caution will hand Moscow to the enemy without a fight. Into command steps 67-year-old Mikhail Kutuzov, a dough-faced veteran with one good eye and the instinct of a hunting wolf. Kutuzov rides west, watches the French dust clouds swell on the horizon, and chooses his ground at a sleepy village called Borodino. 2 crude roads from Smolensk funnel straight through gentle ridges and the winding Kolocha River. If Napoleon wants Moscow, he must drive a spear through this choke point. Farmers, priests, and soldiers heave earth for days. On the left rise 3 arrow-shaped mounds, the Flèches, each banked with raw timber, each bristling with cannon. In the center, engineers carve the Great Redoubt, 20 feet of packed dirt, a trench 8 feet deep, 30 guns aligned muzzle to muzzle. The right rests on Borodino village itself, its wooden cottages loopholed for musket fire. By 4th September 1812, the Russians had 640 guns dug in and 130,000 men ready, among them raw conscripts who stared wide-eyed at their shovels, knowing that tomorrow they might trade them for bayonets. Napoleon, riding forward scouts, finds a lone outwork at Shevardino guarding Kutuzov's left flank. If that redoubt falls, the emperor can loop behind the Russians and crush them against the river. On 5 September, 30,000 French storm the mound in smoking heat, stepping over their own wounded to grab the rampart at dusk. They take it, at a cost of 4,000 dead, yet the victory buys only acres of blood-soaked scrubland. Beyond, the main Russian line glitters in the setting sun like a saw of steel. That night, campfires map the valley in twin constellations. French drummers beat a steady tattoo while guns rumble into position. Across the no-man's land, Orthodox priests chant over rows of kneeling infantry, incense curling skyward. A weary Kutuzov tells his officers, "Tomorrow we fight for Moscow. God is our fortress." Nearby, Prince Bagration shakes each of his grenadiers by the hand, promising vodka to survivors. Inside a damp tent, Napoleon sweats with fever, yet refuses laudanum. He scribbles orders. Davout on the right, Ney in the center, Murat's cavalry massed for the killing blow. He looks at the hourglass on his desk. Sand slips away faster than ammunition. At 6 o'clock on the 7th of September, a single French 12-pounder cracks the dawn. The great game has begun. Marshal Davout's corps charges the Fleches, passing through a ravine already stripped by Russian roundshot. Frenchmen sprint uphill, muskets held high, shakos askew, mouths open in silent screams. Canister shells explode like iron hail, cutting lanes through the attack columns. Survivors leap the ditch and claw at the logs, stabbing between gaps. For an instant, blue coats flood the first redan. Tricolor flags whip over the parapet. Then the Russian grenadiers counterattack, bayonets low, screaming, "Hurrah!" The French lines buckle, roll back, and crash against their own second wave. Dead pile 3 deep. The Fleches remain in Russian hands. Napoleon's staff sees Davout limp from the field, boot torn by grapeshot, and rush a fresh assault under Marshal Ney. Again, the slope turns red. Again, the ramparts change hands. Again, Bagration himself rides the line, saber drawn, urging peasants and guardsmen alike to hold. At noon, a musket ball rips his leg. The prince topples. Word races down the trenches that their lion has fallen. Russian fire slackens. Finally, at 1 p.m., after 4 violent hours, the Fleches belong to France, but only by inches and only for the moment. While the left burns, Napoleon turns his eyes to the heart of the field. 8 massed French batteries open on the Great Redoubt, 116 guns blasting 2 shells every minute. Earth geysers into the air, wooden gun carriages splinter, but General Raevski stands atop the rampart, white gloves dark with soot, and re-aims each cannon himself. His gunners, stripped to the waist, lash the oncoming infantry with round shot at 60 paces. Marshal Murat, plumes dancing, senses the hinge of fate. He wheels 10,000 cuirassiers, men encased in polished steel, behind a ridge unseen by Russian eyes. At 2:30 p.m., infantry of the 3rd Corps storms the front of the redoubt, even as Murat's cavalry breaks cover on the flank, hooves drumming like thunder. Horses leap the ditch, cuirassiers plunge into the embrasures, sabers slash gun crews where they stand. In minutes, the world inside the fortress reduces to smoke, screams, and the hiss of bayonets meeting flesh. Raevski, cloak in shreds, fights clear with a pistol in each hand. When the smoke lifts, French eagles crown the rampart. Yet the cost is staggering. More than 8,000 Frenchmen have fallen for a single strongpoint. Back at the Shevardino Knoll, aides gallop to Napoleon, shouting, "The Russian center reels! Commit the guard!" The Emperor, pale with dysentery, shakes his head. "I will not spend my last cartridge," he whispers, fearing Kutuzov holds unseen reserves. The Imperial Guard, 40,000 of Europe's finest, waits, musket silent, as lesser men bleed dry. Late afternoon brings a final shock. On the French left flank, Cossack commander Matvei Platov circles wide, bursts into Borodino village, and shatters exhausted French defenders. The raid lasts moments, yet freezes Napoleon's resolve. He orders no grand pursuit, no decisive blow, only more artillery. Shells roar until powder runs low, then sputter out. By 5 o'clock, muskets crackle sporadically. By 6, silence grips the valley. Twilight reveals a killing field, 6 miles long, carpeted with corpses in blue, green, red, and ragged peasant gray. Each side has lost a quarter of its strength. Neither has broken the other's spirit. Kutuzov calls a council by lantern light. Officers argue to stand another day, but the old general knows his army cannot endure a second furnace. He orders a disciplined withdrawal toward Moscow, trusting scorched earth and winter cold to finish what Borodino began. At dawn, French patrols find trenches empty, except for moaning wounded and abandoned guns pointing at the sky. Napoleon rides the captured redoubt, boots crunching spent cartridges. He surveys a valley of blackened wheat, shattered limbers, and horses swarmed by flies. Wind carries the stench of powder and rot. His bulletins broadcast victory, yet he feels none. "The most terrible of my battles," he mutters. Still, he marches on. On 14th September, he enters Moscow expecting a surrender and finds a ghost city engulfed in flames. The inhabitants have torched their own capital rather than feed him. Smoke swirls around the golden crosses of the Kremlin. Empty streets echo with the crackle of falling roofs. No envoy arrives. Frost appears on puddles. Food stores run out. At last, on the 19th of October, Napoleon gives the order to retreat. Snow begins in earnest. Roads vanish under drifts. Wagons overturn. Guardsmen gnaw frozen horseflesh. Night temperatures sink to 20 below zero. Muskets misfire because fingers cannot bend. Cossacks pick at the columns like jackals, capturing stragglers by the thousand. Across the Berezina River, engineers build rickety bridges under artillery fire. Swarms of desperate men trample each other to cross. By December, what was once the Grande Armée resembles a shuffling mob of frostbitten wraiths. 90,000 souls, barely one man in five who started, shuffle back across the Niemen and into legend. The world hears the story in fragments. An emperor who conquered kingdoms yet could not conquer distance. A battle that looked like a draw but proved a death sentence. Soldiers who traded their futures for an inch of frozen road. Borodino did not surrender Russia, but it cracked Napoleon's aura of invincibility and bought the time winter needed. Endurance, not glory, decided the fate of empires. From the moonlit banks of the Niemen to the frozen graveyard of the Russian winter, Napoleon's dream burned bright, and then burned out. Borodino proved that courage can bleed an empire dry, that distance can defeat genius, and that even the greatest conqueror is helpless against a people who will trade land for time. History echoes with the tramp of a once invincible army reduced to whispers on the snow, reminding us that endurance, not glory, decides the fate of nations. If this tale gripped you, march with us on the next campaign. Like the video, share it with fellow history lovers, and hit subscribe so you never miss the turning points that shaped our world.